Hi, this is Fred Snyder of the B-52s and the Superions, who were formerly the Del Morons. And every time I'm in Kalamazoo, I tune into WIDR.
Support for Wider FM comes from Pedal Bicycles, now with 2 locations in downtown Kalamazoo and Portage. Pedal Bicycles has the right bike for every Kalamazoo rider, whether you're blazing the trails, cruising the streets, or just getting off the training wheels. To keep your ride running smooth, Pedal Bicycles offers multiple levels of repair services, anything from a quick tune-up to a complete overhaul. And to keep you safe and looking fly, Pedal Bicycles has all of the gear and apparel you'll need. To discover your spin within, head to 185 Romans Road in Portage, 611 West Michigan Avenue in downtown Kalamazoo, or pedalbicycle.com. Thanks, Pedal Bicycle, for supporting sustainable transportation, Buns of Steel, and Radio Evolution.
It's time for our weekly RSO Spotlight here on WIDR Kalamazoo.
Hi, I'm Jose Alexis Mejia.
And I'm Cesar Ortiz.
And we're the brothers of Sigma Lambda Beta International Fraternity Incorporated. We were founded here at Western Michigan University, April 3rd, 1988.
Our 4 pillars are brotherhood, scholarship, community service, and cultural awareness. Our mission statement is to nurture and further a dynamic, value-based environment which utilizes our historically Latino-based fraternity as a catalyst to better serve the needs and wants of all people.
And we strive for higher education, so if you want to contact us at wmubetas@gmail.com and Facebook and Instagram, WMUbetas. Thank you.
This has been our weekly RSO Spotlight here on WIDR Kalamazoo. For more Spotlight coverage, head to Western Herald or YBot Connects on Twitter. To find more information on how to spotlight your RSO, head to WIDRFM.org.
Hello, Wider listeners. I am back. If you are a regular listener of the show, I want to apologize. I have been gone for the last 2 weeks. The week before last was due to some activity from ICE, that's Immigration and Customs Enforcement. I had to go out there and do some solidarity work. If you are curious about that, you can go to the Hoodrat Strategist Facebook page. I've got some more information about what went down, what the situation is, particularly locally here in Kalamazoo. Last week, I was at a training in Detroit, movement politics, actually, because basically, apart from this radio show, I also do a lot of organizing, and when it comes to the establishment, they're playing checkers. I'm playing chess. When it comes to politics, my strategy is the best. What? Okay. So, that being said, let's kick off the show, as we always do. The following thoughts, views, and opinions are not necessarily those of 89.1 FM WIDR Kalamazoo or Western Michigan University, no matter how dope or insightful they may be. If you are a new listener, this is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, a weekly program where we come on air, drop some truth bombs, and call out the establishment's BS, both nationally, abroad, and right here at home. So, I picked a very interesting couple of weeks to go on hiatus. While I was gone, it seems Grand Negus Trump found the blow things up button. So we're going to be talking about that a whole lot during the show. I want to make sure we highlight some of the local stuff that's been going on as well. But yeah, we're definitely going to be having a more in-depth discussion about that. And also later in the program, we'll be joined with Joe Lorenz. He's an organizer of a socialist political group here on campus. And we're going to be diving into some of the education work they've been doing here at Western and, of course, talk about American imperialism. So, stay tuned for that. We're going to play a quick song to kind of set the mood. Yeah, please keep your dial locked. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, your only source for political revolution.
gathered in their masses, just like witches at black masses. Evil minds that plot destruction, sorcerer of death's construction. In the fields of bodies burning, as the war machine keeps turning. Death and hatred to mankind, poisoning their brainwashed minds. Oh Lord, yes. Politicians hide themselves away. They only started the war. Why should they go out to fight? They leave peril to the poor. Yeah. Time will tell them they have power minds, making war just for fun, treating people just like pawns in chess. Wait until that judgment day comes. Yeah. Now in darkness, world stops turning as you hear the bodies burning. No more war pigs have the power, and as God has struck the hour, day of judgment, God is calling. On their knees, the war pigs crawling, begging mercies for their sins. Satan laughing spreads his wings. Oh Lord, yeah.
Welcome back. Excuse me. Let me clear my throat. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program. So, wanted to talk about Line 5. Oh, for those of you who don't know, Line 5 is an oil pipeline up in the Mackinac Straits. There's been some scuttlebutt. They want to rebuild it. We have the technology. Make it faster, more dangerous, pump more oil through it. Yes. And there's some point of contention. Essentially, those who are part of the, keep it in the ground water protector movement, of which I will full disclosure, I am a part of, are very wary about building more fossil fuel infrastructure. And several things come to concern, or points of concern, I should say. One is that, again, this is going to be in the Mackinac Straits, which is in our Great Lakes. The fresh water in our lakes is one of the biggest ecological assets we have. And it's also something that there's a lot of solidarity around. Everyone knows if there's an oil spill in one of the Great Lakes, it will be an unmitigated environmental and economic disaster. There's actually been a lot of coastal towns that, regardless of, their kind of place on the political spectrum, are very much opposing this pipeline for those very reasons. They don't want a bunch of oil slicks showing up and ruining their communities. And the second reason is that, guess who is in charge of this pipeline? Well, it might just be Enbridge. Dun, dun, dun. Okay. Yeah, okay, y'all don't know who that is? Well, some of y'all might not know who that is. 4 years ago, take you back to 2013. What happened in 2013? Is that the year The Dark Knight Rises came out? I'm sorry, I was trying to think of The Dark Knight Rises just hit theaters. Maybe that was 2012. Anyway, yeah, I was trying to paint a picture and I did it very poorly. But that was the year of the Kalamazoo oil spill. I believe one of the largest inland oil spills in American history. And it was the largest inland oil spill in American history at that time. Enbridge historically has been extremely irresponsible. Not only in letting the pipe infrastructure get so poor that it breaks and contaminates our river and our ecology, but also in the cleanup. There were several times that basically they were told to go clean up the oil in the river. What they essentially did was dump a bunch of dirt over it. If you look up Enbridge Lies on YouTube, there's a lot of videos. There's this fellow named John Bolenball, and he actually shows you. He sticks something in this apparatus. Basically a stick. He swirls it around in the muck. And just after doing that for a little bit, a bunch of oil spouts out. I also have another activist friend I know personally who they were walking along the river and they sunk in to the dirt. So, quote unquote dirt. Ended up about waist deep. They are still dealing with medical problems because they basically landed into a covered up oil spot. Oil hole, if you will. And my friend now, he's crippling central nervous issues, chronic pain, has to walk with a cane. So this is what Enbridge hath wrought, and having them build a pipeline up in the Mackinac Straits is very troubling. I interviewed some Earth First activists on the show a couple weeks ago. You can find that program on our YouTube page. If you want to know more in depth about Line 5, I would please recommend you check that out. But this is about what happened last night. Unfortunately, I was not able to go to this commission meeting, which is very unfortunate because from what I all told, it was a very dramatic county commission meeting. So I'm going to read a little bit from, this is WMUK's article on it. Kalamazoo County resolution on Enbridge Line 5 withdrawn. Ooh. So basically what the commission was going to vote on last night was a resolution that would say, like, the county of Kalamazoo calls for the shutdown of Enbridge's Energy Line 5. So kind of how it played out is Mike Quinn ended up pulling the resolution. He's a Democrat. When it looked like it wasn't going to pass a vote. There were only 4 members on the board who had clear support for the resolution. Obviously, supporters of the resolution, like I just said, they argued, Line 5 is in very dubious condition. And, it would lead to some widespread environmental and economic devastation. So, one of the kind of, word salad, detractors, Commissioner Mike Seals, he was a Democrat, and he said that regulators keep a close watch on the pipeline. He went on to say, I can't expect them to just shut it down when all these things are in place to protect it. Seals, who used to inspect gas lines for Consumers Energy, said Tuesday. Seals later said that as a retired employee of Consumers, he would have abstained on the pipeline vote. And as it goes on, a number of people who attended the board's regular meeting Tuesday night expressed frustration at the resolution's withdrawal. Kathy Schoen says Michigan has already experienced a number of oil spills. If we don't do anything, if we just wait and see, it's going to be a matter of time and another spill will occur. God forbid it's at the Straits. So at points, the media grew rowdy, or not the media, the activist folks who showed up to the meeting. So some quotes I want to highlight. This is from the Pro Kzoo's Twitter feed. This was during the citizens' feedback time around 7 o'clock. Enbridge has already broken its promise to protect our water. They sure have. Evidence that braces are missing. Check out oil and water don't mix. Currents will make it unmanageable. That's kind of speaking towards arguments about how this kind of we have a cleanup plan, and really it's not very effective. And there was somebody who said they are shocked that funds for a county building are being chosen over the environment. I'm about to tell you what that's about. And just a little fact, 290,000 gallons of oil were dumped by Enbridge lines during that oil spill. So I'm going to play a little clip from the county board meeting. This is from Sevilla Man. This is WMUK.
With WMUK News, I'm Gordon Evans.
Bullying elected officials.
You guys asked for that kind of discourse when you changed it. You're trying to play us off for stupid.
Just. Commissioner McGraw makes a motion for recess.
Last night's Kalamazoo County Commission meeting was interrupted by protesters who wanted commissioners to approve a resolution calling for the shutdown of an oil pipeline in the Straits of Mackinac. That resolution was withdrawn because it lacked the support needed to pass. WMUK local government and education reporter Sevilla Mann covered the meeting. She joins us by Skype. Good morning, Sevilla.
Good morning.
What was the resolution before the County Commission last night?
This was the resolution calling for the shutting down of this Enbridge Line 5 oil pipeline that runs through the Straits of Mackinac. This is something we've been hearing environmental concerns about for some time, that the pipes are older, that it's maybe hard to know exactly what kind of condition they're in, and especially that if the pipes were to break, that the Straits is a very bad place to have an oil pipeline. this is what environmentalists say, because a leak could lead to oil spreading throughout the lakes because of the way the currents move up there. So this was a resolution calling on the county to support the shutdown. Obviously, that's not something the county can control on its own, but the idea was to show the state where Kalamazoo County stands on the issue.
How contentious did this meeting get last night? We heard a little bit of it there in the opening clip, but give us a sense of what was going on in that room.
The meeting got pretty contentious. There were actually two meetings. Most of the discussion of this resolution happened at the first meeting in the Committee of the Whole. That's where Commissioner Mike Quinn, who introduced this resolution, saw that he was probably only going to get 4 votes on it, and he withdrew this resolution. Then later happens the regular meeting, and that's where you heard the back and forth there with the protesters. You had many people speaking, saying, first of all, why was this taken off the table? And secondly, saying that they support this resolution. They want to see it come to a vote. And you did have some of that back and forth there. You also had a lot of calmer comments from the audience. You heard some real genuine concern from folks that a break in the pipeline could be catastrophic. One of the speakers last night was Andrew Joyce.
The shame will fall on all of us, all of Michigan. It's not even just people in government, definitely not the Enbridge Corporation, which is in Canada. Nobody around the world is going to remember that it was this Canadian corporation that did it. They're going to remember that the people of Michigan were not up for being stewards of the water.
That was Andrew Joyce speaking at last night's Kalamazoo County Commission meeting. What he was saying is that if the pipelines in the Straits of Mackinac break, the shame will be on everyone in Michigan.
So why was this resolution then withdrawn?
Well, it was withdrawn because it appeared in the Committee of the Whole meeting that it simply wasn't going to get enough votes to pass. Now, it wasn't crystal clear.
All right. I think I'm going to kind of stop the clip there. Got the really important bits in there. Anyway, I did want to mention a very important part of that story. So later at the meeting, the commissioners accepted a $45,000 grant from Enbridge. For an airboat and equipment for the county sheriff's department. From Enbridge. Sorry, I have to really emphasize that part because, that corporation that poisoned us? Oh, well, they're going to buy us a boat. Isn't that just grand? I was also told from the meeting, it was Commissioner Stephanie Moore, I believe, she asked, well, if we pass this resolution, and I am paraphrasing, are we still going to be able to get the grant? Now, granted, here's the tricky thing. Is everybody in Kalamazoo County, is it a consensus on Line 5? No, well, no. A lot of people don't even really know about it. That's the importance of education and trying to develop an awareness of these local issues. But you don't need to be a political geek to remember that time when your backyard stunk of oil, which I've heard is like worse than sewage. And you got headaches, and your pets died or got sick, or you got sick, or your children got sick. The very land that you live on became toxic. And our city commission wants to not only talk to these people, but take their money. This corporation that poisoned us, not could poison us, they did 3 years ago. Their negligence, their misconduct polluted the Kalamazoo River, destroyed a lot of people's lives. and our county commission is going to take a gift from them. A $45,000 grant. And, you know, look, at some point, you can say, you can give people the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they don't understand the danger of an oil leak. Maybe it's somebody like, Mike Seals, who has confidence that these pipes are safe. But how daft, how short is your memory if you don't understand the level of negligence that Enbridge is capable of? That they would they would half-heartedly do this sloppy cleanup that left oil all over our wetlands and our woods and our rivers that you can poke a stick and the crude would start bubbling up. Kind of effect that has on our wildlife, our flora and our fauna, our farmers, our people who again, the Kalamazoo River flows through neighborhoods and backyards. How short is your memory, County Commission? Now, honestly, I was a little bit surprised by this. I figured it would be a contentious vote. It would probably go along party lines. But you know what? Maybe I'm naive. I thought, well, there are a lot of more conservative people in the county who don't like Enbridge either. Maybe some of the Republican commissioners will step up and vote against Line 5. Well, no, not a single one of them did. And 2 of the Democrats didn't either. And look, Mike Seals, I'm not going to completely disrespect you, but you have a skewed perspective. Consumers Energy, I'm sure, treated you very well. But we cannot keep building fossil fuel infrastructure. We have to protect our ecology. Do you remember a couple weeks ago I talked about an article where it said the projections for climate change said that our state is going to be basically a kind of safe haven. We're not going to get it as bad as most of the country. There will come a time, perhaps when I am very old or after I'm dead, where Michigan will need to be a stable environment for climate refugees. That's what we're looking at in the future. And you want to roll the dice and risk poisoning our Great Lakes? You want to take money from these oil people? The type of people who will hire cops to shoot at innocent people with tear gas and rubber bullets, myself included. I'm very disappointed in the county commission. And one thing I will say is that they did listen to the people. In a sense, 3 of the Democratic commissioners basically invited the Line 5 activists to engage in a town hall with the county commission. So I will give them props for that. They understand that this is a very passionate issue, and they are going to conduct a meeting to listen to us. So there's still some leverage for change, but yeah, keep your eyes glued onto this issue, ladies and gentlemen. When the time comes, we're going to have to make sure that our commission does the right thing. And you better know I'm going to be looking into this $45,000 grant. Taking anything from that Enbridge Corporation, to me, that's unacceptable. It's absolutely unacceptable. We're going to take a quick break, ladies and gentlemen. You are listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution. Keep your dial locked.
On average, Americans produce 4 pounds of trash per day. Per capita, the U.S. is the largest trash producer in the world. Only you can help change this. Only you can save future generations from a dirty, polluted planet. Reduce, reuse, recycle. Look for products with less packaging. Buy less and higher quality products. Choose reusable over disposable. Buy used and recycle what you can't reuse. And don't forget to read the container labels and separate waste properly on campus. More information about the future that's in your hands at epa.gov/recycle.
Are you trying to get your local Kalamazoo business name out to the WMU and Greater Kalamazoo communities? Why not do so while supporting Radio Evolution through underwriting and donations? For more information, please visit widrfm.org.
Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. You are listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for radio or political revolution. Sorry, I got my taglines mixed up there. Oh dear. Okay, so just got done talking about Line 5. If you want more information on that, again, we did an interview a couple weeks ago with some Earth First activists who are organizing around that issue. You can find that episode on our YouTube page. That's the Hoodrat Strategist radio program. Look for it on YouTube. So let's I wanted to discuss this very good article from the Detroit Metro Times. It's by Jack Lessenberry. For those of you who don't know Jack is he's a very talented and dedicated political reporter here in Michigan, and he does a lot of investigation and reporting into what goes on Michigan state level politics. And this is an article he wrote and published on April 5th. And the title is, "When It Comes to Ethics, Michigan Lawmakers Are the Worst of the Worst." So I'm going to kind of skip around a little bit. But he goes on to say, there have been many other less colorful crooks. He tells an anecdote about Billy Jefferson, who's a Louisiana Democrat who basically stole $90,000. I say, but when it comes to ethical rules and standards for integrity, would you believe that Michigan is worse? Far, far worse? Well, we are. We are, in fact, the worst of the worst, and there's documented proof. 2 years ago, the Center for Public Integrity completed its latest data-driven investigation into ethical standards for lawmakers nationwide. They looked at ethics codes and the ability to enforce them. They looked at transparency and accountability and standards of integrity. And we were in a class of our own. Not only did we get a failing grade in nearly every area, we were the worst state in the union, hands down. Few people know how bad things are, though State Senate Majority Leader Arlen Mikoff's attempts to prevent expansion of the Freedom of Information Act to cover legislators has gotten some attention, as has his successful fight to keep secret campaign contributions secrets. U.S. Representative Dan Kildee, a Democratic congressman from Flint, has been talking about this in Washington. It's been a surprise to people around here and back home, the fact that Michigan standards are so pathetically low. He told me during a phone interview from Washington, where he was waiting around for the health care vote that never came. Pathetically low might be an understatement. Michigan lawmakers routinely engage in shenanigans that would send a congressman to jail. State legislators can, for example, keep their outside income and financial transactions secret. That means we can't even know who owns or is trying to buy them, or their vote on a particular bill. Our representatives can cheerfully vote the way a special interest lobbyist tells them to, walk away from the legislator when their term limited time is up, and go to work for that lobbyist the next day. They can, and many do, maintain secretive expense accounts run as nonprofits or as 527s after a section of the tax code. These can be used for expenses, quote-unquote, related to holding office. And he says in parentheses, good luck finding out where the money in them comes from. Michigan lawmakers also can and do shake down their staff, people on the state payroll, for campaign contributions. They can legally take gifts from lobbyists and accept campaign contributions from contractors who want to do business with the state. What that means, of course, is that any contractor who wants to do business with the state better slip the relevant legislators a wad of some basically kind of pay-to-play type stuff going on here, where, you know, you scratch my back with some money and we will scratch your back with some contracts. Kildee calls this a transactional environment. And then Lesenberry compares it to Al Capone's Chicago, which, frankly, I think is kind of insulting to Al Capone, but sometimes, he told me, a bill, like the energy bill that took forever to pass last year, gets unaccountably held up for long periods of time. Why? Because some unknown party with skin in the game has to be taken care of or bought off. So it goes on to say that Kildee did introduce a bill forced Michigan to clean up. It's called the Make State Government More Open, Honest, and Transparent Act, HB 554, which would apply to all states, not just Michigan. The goal is to force them to adopt at least as high or of standards of ethics, transparency, and accountability as congressmen are required to follow. Actually, it's a clever enforcement mechanism. Unless states comply, they would lose the ability to administer programs that get federal money, which is probably pretty close to all of them. Washington would take away local control. That's the last thing any state government wants. If we know anything, we know that federal oversight is required if we ever want Lansing to be anything other than an ethical sewer. So, if you want to check out the full article, that is at Detroit Metro Times. When it comes to ethics, Michigan lawmakers are the worst of the worst. So, we talk a lot about on the show about political corruption. And, it's really important to understand what is going on in your own backyard. How many of you knew that, Michigan was particularly corrupt? I think we all have kind of an inkling of it after seeing what happened in Flint last year. Privatization, run amok, government making decisions that are just absolutely morally abhorrent when it comes to taking care of the people. Yes, we've certainly seen that. But there's always a good reason. There is always a good reason. Hold on just a second, folks. I will be right back. Sorry about that, folks. I had to check in with some friends. There have been some reports of ice sightings in the area. So, I'll try not to, I don't want to cut the show early. Hopefully that will not have to happen. But we'll see. So, let's go on and talk a little bit about the next article. So, we've, the March for Science is coming up this weekend. And, you know, there's been some discussions with, me between a lot of people I know in kind of the activist internet sphere about, a March for Science. We understand the need for, sort of intellectualism, scientific research is under attack from, the Trump administration in particular. And, as also kind of ancillarily related to climate change and the study of it. That's kind of the focus of this march. But, science has also wrought a lot of not so good stuff. Particularly scientists who are employed by, the military-industrial complex. Scientists at corporations such as Monsanto, who are maybe, they are sought to engineer things without the proper safeguards or without it going through the proper channels to be, meet those ethical safety standards. And that's just kind of an offhand example. But what I found this very interesting article about is from April 5th, 2017. It's from the website Free Radicals. And Free Radicals is basically a website. It's a collective of citizen scientists on a mission to include a critical social justice lens into science. So the title of the article is Zapatistas Reimagine Science as Tool of Resistance. So real quick, for those of you who don't know, the Zapatistas, they are a kind of revolutionary group in southern Mexico, based in Chiapas. And it's a leftist revolutionary group, kind of on the militant side, derived from the revolutionary Emiliano Zapata. So this was, they held a conference with some scientists, and I'm going to read some excerpts from it. So, as scientists grapple with what it means to march for science and defend an apolitical and ahistorical vision of science safe from identity, the Zapatistas have put forth the possibilities of a symbiotic relationship between science and racial justice. Conference title, Los Conciencias, Los Conciencias, combines the Spanish words for science and awareness. This wordplay captures two of the conference's themes, an interrogation of science as an oppressive force and the potential, through this awareness, to harness the power of science on behalf of indigenous communities. So this 10-day meeting of revolutionaries and scientists provided an opportunity for collective learning through presentations by members of the EZLN and over 80 scientists from at least 11 countries. Featured a wide range of disciplines ranging from theoretical ecology to solar photochemistry, with talks, panels, and workshops such as The Academy May Be Exclusionary, but Can Science Be a Common Good? What Are the Stars Made Of? Connectivity and Graphs, and Science for Oppression or Science for Liberation. So it goes on to say, kind of revolves around this central question. Can you create a science that is truly human? Conference providing an educational opportunity for members of the Zapatista community while challenging scientists to explore the fraught histories of colonial scientific practice. The General Command of the EZLN and over 80 scientists from at least 11 countries. Oh, sorry. That got screwed up. The General Command of the EZLN opened the conference by describing how science can and should be anti-capitalist. Begin to dream and you will see that we can only fight capitalism with good scientific science, the art of the artist, and the guardians of Mother Nature together with those below from across the world. This is our responsibility. So they continued to it was a really good dialogue that they kind of had between this revolutionary group and the scientists who were invited to this conference. Subcomandante Galeano pushed the scientists to seriously consider justice from the perspective of a scientist. To confront the issues of pursuing a supposedly apolitical and ahistorical science, he asked, with all the damage that the capitalists have done to the people through their misuse of science, scientifically, can you create a science that is truly human in order to avoid falling into a science that is inhuman? And if it is possible to create a truly human science, who can create it? This question and the other questions the Zapatistas ask of the scientists are essential for scientists to ask regularly to themselves at lab meetings, to their mentors, to their mentees, in classrooms, and at conferences. Science that ignores these questions is not apolitical, it is oppressive. So the conference demands a future where science is used as a tool of resistance. They refuted the assumptions that science and activism are insoluble and that science is neutral. By leaving these assumptions behind, the conference created a space to build a new science that is affirmatively community-based, just, and anti-capitalist. So if you want to hear more from that, they have some audio samples. You can, again, that's Free Radicals, the website. And the article is Zapatistas Reimagine Science as Tool of Resistance. And yes, that is very important as we go forward. There is a certain intersection of, where we meet this sort of encroachment of neoliberalism. And we talk about people who, maybe they recycle, maybe they vote blue, but maybe they also go to work at their scientific laboratories and they're helping build weapons or they're helping build chemicals that are going to damage the environment. There's a certain disconnect there. And I think it's very important to have these sort of open dialogues with those people involved, because having just kind of a shallow, neutral politicism around science is going to lead to its misuse. It's going to lead to its co-opting by the oligarchs and the 1%. Yeah, this is something I concern myself a lot. Like this hypothetical scenario where, our technology is evolving at an ever accelerating rate. By the time I'm 50, 60, who knows what sort of wonders will be in this world, like, digitized brains, the augmentations, the singularity. But who will have access to these new technologies? Is it going to be everyone? Will it be put forth in a collectivist manner? Or will human evolution through technology become classified, stratified through class? The scientists are the gatekeepers. They are the ones that can answer this question. So it is definitely important that while scientists do their work, they also have a sense of class consciousness and class conscience. All right, we will be right back. We're going to take a quick little break, and then we're going to dive into some more discussion. Friend Joe should be getting to the studio pretty soon. Keep your dial locked.
you're listening to 89.1 WIDR, Kalamazoo, Michigan, Kalamazoo. You know what you're listening to, Kalamazoo, Michigan, man. What are you, stupid?
Wider FM is proud to be supported by the Kalamazoo Community Foundation. The Kalamazoo Community Foundation is a non-profit organization that takes donations, invests them, and uses the money to fund programs for the betterment of the Kalamazoo community. If you are interested in donation or looking for more info, you can go to kalfound.org.
It's time for our weekly RSO Spotlight here on WIDR Kalamazoo.
Hi, I'm Jose Alexis Mejia.
And I'm Cesar Ortiz.
And we're the brothers of Sigma Lambda Beta International Fraternity Incorporated. We were founded here at Western Michigan University, April 3rd, 1988.
Our 4 pillars are brotherhood, scholarship, community service, and cultural awareness. Our mission statement is to nurture and further a dynamic, value-based environment which utilizes our historically Latino-based fraternity as a catalyst to better serve the needs and wants of all people.
And we strive for higher education, so if you want to contact us at wmubetas@gmail.com and Facebook and Instagram, WMUbetas. Thank you.
This has been our weekly RSO Spotlight here on WIDR Kalamazoo. For more Spotlight coverage, head to Western Herald or YBot Connects on Twitter. To find more information on how to spotlight your RSO, head to widrfm.org.
Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. You are listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR. If you're just tuning in, weekly show where we call out the establishment's BS. So we are joined now by Joe Lorenz. Am I pronouncing
Lorenz,
it?
yeah.
Lorenz, yes. And he is with the International Youth and Students for Social Equality Group here on Western's campus. And I've been wanting to bring you on for a couple weeks now, actually, because you guys have been doing some very interesting work here on campus, particularly as related to, the voice of the socialist left, the radical left, if you will, that I feel is really not part of the conversation as much as it needs to be. Granted, there's certain things going on in our political environment that people are maybe a little bit more hip and aware of it now, but speaking of awareness, I know you guys have been hosting a lecture series lately involving the Russian Revolution Centennial. I was wondering if maybe you could speak to that for a little bit and kind of tell our listeners what you've been doing and what this is all a part of.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on, by the way. Like you said, I'm with the International Youth and Students for Social Equality at WMU. We're a socialist student organization here at Western, but the IYSSE itself is actually an independent organization which anyone can join. There's a website, iysse.com, where you can join the organization by agreeing to their statement of principles. I'm also a member of the Socialist Equality Party, which is the Trotskyist party in the United States, part of the Fourth International. And I'm here to get the word out for this lecture series that we've been holding on the centenary of the Russian Revolution. This coming Saturday will be the 4th of 5 lectures. It'll be a local listening event at the Bernhard Center, where we will be listening to a lecture called Spontaneity and Consciousness in the February Revolution. Just a little bit more about these lectures. They are to celebrate and study the Russian Revolution of 1917, but they're not done merely as an educational exercise. They're also immensely important for a political perspective. The Socialist Equality Party bases its political perspective on Marxism, on historical materialism, and because of that, the knowledge, the history of the working class is incredibly important for understanding what political line to take in the crisis of capitalism. Now, like I said, this is the fourth lecture. The first three are archived on YouTube. You can listen to the audio. You can also read the text of the lectures at the World Socialist website, which is wsws.org. That is, by the way, a very important website for news analysis and Marxist analysis. They publish in over a dozen languages, 6 days a week, up to over 20 articles a day. And they don't merely talk about politics and news. They talk about science. They talk about art and culture. Really, all of the aspects of what's necessary for building a movement for a socialist revolution. And like I said, this fourth lecture, which we will be meeting in the Bernhard Center this Saturday to listen to at 4:45. It's called Spontaneity and Consciousness in the February Revolution. And the purpose of this lecture will be to analyze the relationship between the seemingly spontaneous outbreak of social revolution in February of 1917 in Russia and the role of the conscious political leadership, the Bolshevik Party, the Revolutionary Marxist Party, in preparing the working class consciousness for that outbreak, which was actually in response to the developments of World War I and that crisis of capitalism. And so I think that for that reason, these lectures are really important for understanding the current crisis of capitalism and the war drive that we are seeing U.S. imperialism take right now.
Yeah, I would certainly say like the centennial couldn't come on more auspicious of a year. We essentially have a figurehead right now who it's almost like this. It's a cartoonish, like carnival level representation of like everything that is wrong with global capitalism, just amped up to this like Saturday morning cartoon level. Now, you mentioned like, especially in this political climate, making that link, what are, some of the lessons you think we should take in what they did in 1917 and how we can apply it to, the current movement, resistance that we have now, which we'll discuss a little bit more in depth, but I kind of wanted to get your broad strokes.
That's a really good question. I think first, before talking about coordinating a response, I think we should maybe discuss what are the most recent developments in this crisis. I think because it's not being discussed in the mainstream media right now at all. The U.S. is closer right now to nuclear war with Russia than it has been since the height of the Cold War. Pence earlier this week, Vice President Pence said the era of strategic patience is over. You can take from that what you want. Of course, there was the U.S. bombing of a Syrian air base in the wake of unsubstantiated allegations of a chemical weapons attack by the Assad regime on his own people, followed quickly thereafter by the dropping of the Moab bomb, the massive ordnance air blast, or as people sometimes call it, the mother of all bombs on Afghanistan. It's the largest non-nuclear bomb ever used. And so the logic of escalation says that the next thing is going to be a tactical nuclear weapon. And then also at the same time that Pence said the era of strategic patience is over, he was actually in Korea he was threatening North Korea, saying they would do well not to test his resolve, meaning Trump, or the strength of the armed forces of the United States in this region. There's escalation in two flashpoints right now. There's the Syrian flashpoint, and there's the North Korean flashpoint. But both of those are actually proxy conflicts between, one in Syria, the United States, and Russia. And then there's the conflict between the United States and China. And in both of those conflicts, both sides are nuclear armed forces. And they really it has the potential to escalate to a nuclear war that could end humanity.
Yeah, that's very true. And, I think another thing people should keep in mind, just to kind of understand the gravity of this, is that what we're seeing going on right now between our world powers is more drastic than anything we've really seen since the end of the Cold War. Particularly, I recently read an article about how Russia and China are thinking about pressuring even more of their allies to drop the petrodollar and get on the gold standard. As we've seen, we talk about American imperialism. There's a pretty close correlation between who we go to war with and who decides not to use our money. I've talked to a lot of people about this. There's a lot of bad actors on the world stage, but why is it we typically only go after people who decide they no longer want to use the U.S. petrodollar? So the economic interests entwined in that, and you mentioned the proxy wars. There's a lot of evidence that shows that this might have to do with these competing oil pipelines that go through Syria. One that America is pushing, and one is that Russia is pushing. So seeing that it's really tied into these financial interests, we talk about the crisis of capitalism. Do you see this as kind of just like a culmination of where this capitalist system has been bringing us for the last really accelerated in the last 100 years or so? But are we kind of seeing global capitalism come to this sort of bubbling head?
Yeah, well, Trotsky in the transitional program, which was the founding document of the Fourth International, he called this the era of the death agony of capitalism, and I think that is a really apt description. There are this crisis of capitalism flows out of the fundamental contradictions of capitalism. The system itself breeds these crises. The two main contradictions are the contradiction between the social character of production and the private ownership of the fruits of production. That meaning any sort of commodity that's produced is produced socially by lots of people, but the profit that comes out of it is kept private. And then there's the second contradiction would be the global character of production, the fact that commodities, the perfect example is something like a smartphone, that's produced on virtually every continent, and it comes together in one commodity. But the world is still divided into this archaic system of nation states, and these nation states are in conflict over resources, access to cheap labor, and trade routes. And those contradictions breed, on the one hand, social inequality, on the other hand, war. And the war is the capitalist solution to these contradictions. The solution of the working class is social revolution, and that happened in 1917. And that's really why this study, the centenary lectures, are really indispensable for our political perspective to find a solution for these the crisis that we face right now.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's interesting. I was recently reading this book called Sleeping Giant, and it talks about like basically the muscle of the working class to kind of rally itself and escalate into a movement. Now, in that book, it was more talking about the New Deal paradigm, but of course, we're in a much more urgent situation beyond perhaps even the typical boom and bust cycle. But one of the things that really struck me was it talked about the ways that the working class is kept divided. There's dog whistle politics. You saw that very explicitly in the presidential campaign and the current president, Mr. Trump. But one of the things, there was an anecdote in there that talked about there's this labor union, and they showed some of these like kind of working class white guys who probably don't read a lot of Marx or a lot of Chomsky, and they showed them the documentary version of Harvest of Empire, which is all about kind of talking about how our military interventions and imperialism in Latin America and our trade deals like NAFTA created the conditions that's what causes immigration. So I'm kind of leading up to that to say, what can we do in this moment where we have this energy? People realize there's something very wrong, but they don't necessarily have the vocabulary to describe it. You have people showing up in Washington by the millions in these pink hats, but they're still very much focusing on these kind of red versus blue political social dynamics. As somebody who's you guys putting these lectures together at Western, what is your hope in trying to educate these people who are maybe newly awakened, but they're not quite there yet? They see Donald Trump as the tip of the iceberg, but they don't see everything that's under it, which is basically our whole economic and political system.
Yeah, well, the crisis is really a crisis of leadership. The working class needs politically independent leadership. It needs Marxism, and it needs to do away with all sorts of divisions of the working class. That can, on one hand, be divisions such as the nationalism espoused by Trump, and which we also are seeing tear apart the European Union right now. But it can also be divisions in the working class based on race and gender. So racism was used to really divide the working class, especially if you look back at the populist movement. It was a farmers peasant movement in the 1890s. The response of the ruling class to that was to establish these laws like the Plessy v. Ferguson ruling that created the separate but equal, really to entrench racism within the American state. But now we actually see a different form of these divisions based on race and gender that more have to do with identity politics, and to say that, for instance, a lot of people write off the white working class of, say, West Virginia, where the workers there face conditions that they've just really deteriorated substantially in the last few decades. And there's counties there that voted heavily for Bernie Sanders, and then once Hillary Clinton won the Democratic nomination for president, they voted heavily for Donald Trump. And people pointed to that and said that is evidence that the working class, the white working class, is racist. And socialists, Marxists should reject that. They should say no. What happened there was the massive shift to the left among the working class, which we saw evidence of with the popular vote for Bernie Sanders. 13 million people voted for Bernie Sanders in the primaries because he called himself a democratic socialist. But the Democratic National Committee really sabotaged his campaign to give the nomination to Hillary Clinton. And Hillary Clinton was of the camp that said conditions are great under the Obama administration. And those workers really saw that as a punch in the gut because their conditions, their quality of life had substantially deteriorated during the Obama administration. And now that's not to say that I endorse Bernie Sanders because I have political, our movement has political disagreement with Bernie Sanders. Like I said, we call for the political independence of the working class, which Bernie Sanders did not. But the 13 million votes for Bernie Sanders do indicate a vast shift to the left in the United States, which I think is really important.
Yeah, that is a very important point. That's kind of how I grapple with it myself. I was definitely a sort of radical, not really politically engaged before he showed up in Spectrum, and my level of engagement with institutional politics at this point is really relegated by the fact that he drove the conversation to the left that I did not think was possible. Now I know that the boom and bust of history, things kind of flow to the left and the right in this sort of natural pattern, but I was kind of more hopeless that the oligarchs and the capitalists are so entrenched at this point that they could have stopped. I was very surprised he got as far as he did. Granted, as I do discuss this with a lot of my socialist friends, that he's got a lot of problems himself. I think if he were president right now, I'd probably be yelling at him about drone warfare. Not to mention that it still is a form of capitalism. What it basically democratic socialism and the kind of New Deal policies he was talking about was kind of it was all about letting the steam out, so to speak, which I think much to the ruling class's detriment. They probably should have listened to him because now that pressure is just going to keep building up and up and up. So with that kind of dissatisfaction that a lot of people felt from, that one, there's the hope that the left got pushed a lot further than, exceeded my expectations. He got very close, despite the fact that, as you said, the powers that be were actively working against him. Primary was rigged in many ways, from outright election fraud to the inherent bias in the power structure. So in this new political environment that's been kind of shifted to the left, what new hope do you see for a more kind of leftist Marxist ideology to gain some traction in these newly awakened leftist circles?
Well, I want to first comment on just one thing you said there. You said that Bernie Sanders himself shifted the conversation to the left. I would argue that the millions of people who voted for Bernie Sanders shifted the conversation to the left. Mm-hmm. Bernie Sanders really served as a lightning rod, and after a certain point, he served as a restraint on that shift to the left by keeping those millions of people tied to the Democratic Party, which is the oldest capitalist party in the country. What can people do was your question. And this really, I think, brings us back to the importance of a political perspective which brings back the importance of these lectures. You are not going to be able to solve these contradictions by merely electing the right bourgeois politician or by convincing these bourgeois politicians to take the right policies, because after a certain point, their hands are forced due to their social class affiliations. The last lecture, the third lecture, was titled World War and Revolution, and it dealt with World War I and how the Bolsheviks responded to that, and how they were able to respond to the outbreak of World War I by establishing successfully the world's first worker state. And one thing that was discussed heavily in that was the collapse of the Second International, which was the International Party of Socialism, and it was a mass movement, especially in Germany. Throughout Europe, there were millions of people involved, or part of the Second International, and all of those organizations had pledged to internationalist principles. They had said, we are not going to support the outbreak of war, because the Marxists could tell that there were innumerable flashpoints throughout the world, much as there are now. But eventually, in 1914, these parties voted for war credits to support their respective countries entering World War I. The Bolsheviks, led by Lenin, analyzed the class forces behind these betrayals, and they organized opposition to the war in Russia behind the working class, and they were intransigently for the political independence of the working class. They were hostile to all forms of bourgeois ideology, and this is actually the reason that the Bolsheviks were able to, in October, seize power, was that after the February Revolution, which toppled Tsarism in Russia and established the provisional government, which was it was a twin government led both by the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, with two different forms of government that were quickly coming into conflict with each other. And they weren't able to keep out of the war. It was May, and the government was sending troops back into war again, 3 months after this revolt to get out of the war. And the Bolsheviks were able to organize in order to come to power in October, and that ended the Russian involvement in World War I. The Socialist Equality Party and it's the Youth and Student Movement below that, the IYSSE. We base our political perspective on these lessons of history. We are also for the political independence of the working class. We are also hostile to all forms of bourgeois ideology, and we organize and we have events based on that. Based on those principles. There's actually a couple other things I'd like to bring up. We're not only doing these lectures right now, we are actually in the midst of a campaign to free 13 Indian auto workers who have been imprisoned for life. And it's a political imprisonment. I can explain a little more.
Oh, please do. Yeah.
They're at a Maruti Suzuki plant, so it's an international auto manufacturer in India. There were 13 workers who were jailed for murder after a fire broke out at their plant. Now, the backstory behind this is that 12 of those 13 workers were involved in establishing an independent union at their workplace that was in opposition to the company stooge union that was already in place there. Auto workers in the United States will know exactly what I mean by the company stooge union, because they have seen the betrayals of the UAW time and time again. After this fire, these workers were pointed out by supposed eyewitnesses. Now, the eyewitnesses actually were clearly put up to this, because one eyewitness named names A through G. The next eyewitness named the names H through P. It was just in alphabetical order. Yeah. They clearly just had a list of names that they were reading off. Also, the supposed smoking gun was a book of matches that was found at the scene after the fire, but the book of matches itself was never burned. So how was it there for the fire? So the International Committee of the Fourth International, which is the international group that runs the World Socialist websites, that international committee has separate sections in each country. So that in the U.S. there's the Socialist Equality Party of the United States, but there's also Socialist Equality Parties in the UK and Germany and Sri Lanka and Australia. All of these parties are organizing a change.org petition that demands of the Indian government to free these workers immediately. People can find this petition by going to wsws.org. Read more about the case of the Maruti Suzuki workers. We are trying to build an international movement to fight for the freedom of these workers. Also, if I can make one other plug, in addition to these lectures, we have another international event that will come up on April 30th. That Sunday, we are going to be having our International May Day rally, which will be it's an internationally coordinated series of short speeches. It'll be broadcast on YouTube, so in Eastern time, it'll be at 11 a.m. on Sunday. It'll have speakers from around the world, and it'll mostly be on the danger of war and the internationalist socialist response to it, which is guided by our study of the Russian Revolution.
Fantastic. And I believe there's going to be a May Day event downtown the next day. So yeah, by the way, for those of you who don't know, May Day, particularly like this year, there are millions of people across the world. Yeah, that's it. Across the world organizing these strikes. There's going to be a big immigration push this year too, especially here in the United States. I believe they're planning at least a week of migrant work shutdown, basically. From what I've heard, the overall goal is to kind of show the rest of the nation, like what happens when the workers stop. And that is certainly going to have a very dramatic effect. Please make sure I will share that event. I will talk about it on the website. I think it's very important to tie that in to what's going on in the overall worker struggle that we're seeing here in the United States and across the world. And I really love that you guys are working on building this international solidarity. I think too often, in particular, Americans kind of find themselves in this echo chamber where they don't really see their struggle as being part of something global and being part of an overall oppressed class. So we're going to take a quick little break. When we come back, I hope maybe we can discuss a couple other topics. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, your only source for Political Revolution. Keep your dial locked. We will be right back.
Be apparent, but hunger is a rather prominent issue amongst the student body of Western. The Invisible Need Project is a multifaceted initiative that's aimed to help struggling students. Every 2 weeks, generous people donate their food to the pantry located in their Fawn Student Service buildings or other drop-off locations. All you need to do is grab a reusable bag and grab whatever food you need to help sustain yourself. If anyone's unsure when their next meal will be, or if you have a little extra food you'd be willing to donate, the food pantry is your place. If you're looking to help donate, become a volunteer, or just learn more, call 269-387-4742 or email dosa-inp@wmich.edu for details.
This is an open slot in the wider clock and could be filled with an underwriting announcement for your local Kalamazoo business. For more information, please visit widerfm.org and head to the support page.
Be back in just a moment, folks. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are back. I'm here with Joe Lorenz from the local chapter of the International Youth and Students for Social Equality. And I wanted to jump into, this is a topic that we've talked about a lot on the show. For those who have been following the media, this has been kind of in the ether of our national politics since the DNC and the WikiLeaks revelation, and that narrative has kind of been pushed and pushed and pushed. But a funny thing happened around April 4th when those 59 some Tomahawk missiles were dropped on Syria, that story quickly started losing traction in the national media. It wasn't being as doggedly pursued as it was, and it correlated to the fact that as we've seen this resistance to Trump kind of rise since his inauguration, I find it kind of disheartening in a sense. A lot of the energy has been put into these Russian connections. Not to say he does probably have some connections with Russian businessmen. I mean, the conflicts of interest that he has over there are pretty apparent, and he's probably has a lot of them. But what I've seen the liberal media do is divert people's attention to this, and in a way to divert it from any of the other like actual social issues that him and his kind of hyper-conservative puppeteers are really pushing, and also channel people's energy so that what you have on one hand is they stop talking about this, and the cue is that Trump starts dropping bombs on another country. And it makes me concerned, where is the strong anti-war movement in this country? We've been in this state of perpetual warfare for about 15 years now. And how can we, especially from this working class framework, try to divert the people's attention so that we understand what is, at stake with, we're on the verge of, like a Cuban Missile Crisis moment right now. And are we, this new resistance, is it going to keep getting co-opted by these ancillary narratives, or is there a way to really focus people's attention so that they understand this is what's going on, this is the perpetual warfare that is being fed to you? How can we build an anti-war resistance when the mass media is telling people that war is good? It's something that took Trump from being a Russian puppet to presidential.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. First, to talk about the Russian allegations, because first of all, I think there's a parallel between the allegations about the WikiLeaks emails that Russia was behind this and that Trump is a puppet of Putin. Those allegations, just like the allegations that Bashar al-Assad was responsible for the chemical weapons attack, both of those are completely unsubstantiated at this point. There's no evidence that's been given. The State Department, all of the agencies of the U.S. state have said, our intelligence tells us, or basically just trust us. We've never lied to you before. Of course they
And anybody who reads a history book can quickly call that one out.
Yeah.
Right?
But you're right. After the Trump administration bombed Syria, the allegations of him being a Russian puppet went away. I think that is evidence of it supports the analysis that the World Socialist website made about these allegations, that they served two purposes, which I think you kind of talked about. The first purpose being to push the Trump administration towards adopting the line of the Pentagon. I think it was evidence of this conflict within the state between two factions of the ruling class, one of which Hillary Clinton represented, that wanted to see a more hardline stance against Russia. And then the Trump faction, Trump represented this faction that wanted to more aggressively pursue China as a geostrategic rival, just really accelerating Obama's pivot to Asia. And with Trump bombing Syria, I think that the Hillary Clinton anti-Russia faction really saw that Trump was kind of coming into line with the Pentagon, and so those allegations they don't need to harp on them anymore until they need Trump to make another move, and then they'll probably bring him back out again in order to get him to do their bidding. But the second thing that those Russian allegations served to do was to divert the anti-Trump movement, the popular resistance to the Trump administration, which was, like you said, the millions of people that were demonstrating against him, like on the Women's March Day. That was not about Russia at all. That was about his attacks on immigrants, his attacks on the basic democratic rights of Americans, and his attacks on the democratic rights of immigrants. And they were corralling that opposition to Trump into something that was more safe for the capitalist system, something that they could use to, like I said, pressure Trump into pursuing their preferred policy. And so, with the development of the dropping the bombs on Syria, and like you said, those allegations sort of went away. I think that confirms the World Socialist website analysis that I just put forward. But you had another good question which I want to address, because this I think gets to the heart of the matter: is how can an anti-war movement be established, and how can it not be co-opted? Because there have been anti-war movements before. There was the anti-Vietnam protest movement. Many of the leaders of that student protest movement actually were involved in either the Bush or Obama administrations that saw the escalation of militarism in the 21st century. And then there was the 2003 Iraq War protest movement. And where did that go? It got absorbed into the Democratic Party. And with the Obama administration, it turned a war in 2 countries into a war in 7 countries.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And so I said it earlier in the program, it's really that crisis of leadership. There needs to be the World Socialist website and the International Committee of the Fourth International in February of 2016, they published a statement, The Fight Against War, Socialism and the Fight Against War. And it really laid the framework for how can an anti-war movement be established. It has to be based on the working class. It has to be anti-capitalist. It has to be internationalist. You can't have an anti-war movement without those. And if you try to start one, it's going to be co-opted. One other thing. If I could make a book recommendation on this topic, it would be a book by David North. It's called A Quarter Century of War, the U.S. Drive for Global Hegemony. It's written by the chairman of the editorial board for the World Socialist website, David North, and it goes over basically from the end of the Soviet Union until now. The U.S. has almost constantly been at war. It was in Iraq in 1991. And then it was Serbia in 1999. It was Afghanistan and Iraq 2001, 2003, and it's just ballooned out from there. And the book really goes in. It's broken up into each war, and then it breaks it up into the Bush wars and the Obama wars, and it really. It gets to the heart of the fact that these wars are not just they're not just bad policy, but they really come out of the imperatives of the the class forces involved. The U.S. is trying to offset its economic decline, which has been happening since the 1970s, really. It's trying to offset that economic decline by militarily controlling the world's resources. It's oil resources, its trade routes, and its access to cheap labor. And in doing so, it first was only attacking these really oppressed nations in the Middle East, but now it's gotten to the point, it's escalated to the point where the U.S. is going to be, its hand will be forced into attacking these nuclear-armed countries. It's not a matter of preferred policy. It's a matter of the logic of the class system. And so to overcome that, to have a successful anti-war movement, it has to be based on the working class. It has to be anti-capitalist.
I completely agree, and it's so much about education. This is nothing new. Like even going back before Iraq, I mean, this tactic of you appeal to the population's sense of moral urgency. Spanish-American War, there was these allegations of inhumane treatment in Cuba. That's what spurred people to kind of rubber stamp their approval for that war, and we've seen that pattern emerge and repeat itself constantly throughout this century, leading up to where we're at now, where we're facing this very existential culmination of wars that could endanger the very survival of the human race. So what we see, though, are both of the institutional political parties are A-okay with this, and it fosters a division. Good example. So, are you familiar with the Berkeley clashes that happened? I believe it was over the weekend, where
a little bit.
Yeah. Well, the mainstream media, the way they kind of painted this is that it was a clash between Trump supporters and protesters. If you look at the video, there was some actual street brawling, some pretty dicey stuff, and oddly enough, all the riot police kind of just stayed off to the side and watched. Of course, the actual circumstances on the ground those were anti-fascist protesters versus white nationalists. And I thought it was very interesting that both left-wing and right-wing media tried to paint this as something more normalized. It was a clash between basically Democrats and Republicans. So, building that constituent, because there's a lot of one of the things that I thought was very interesting about the ascendancy of Donald Trump was, while there was a lot of race baiting against Muslims, he also did vow to be a non-interventionist, in the sense that he wasn't going to go out of his way to attack new countries. Now, obviously, as we've seen, what the military-industrial complex wants, the military-industrial complex gets. Julian Assange made a very interesting and cheeky point on Democracy Now! He's like, how long does it take for them to get control of a president? Well, as we've seen, about 75 days. So, what is a good way, especially from this socialist perspective, to kind of culture jam people, so that they recognize that the working class really needs to understand that it's more similar than it is different. And what we didn't have in 1917 was the mass media feeding these false narratives down people's throats in such a ubiquitous 24/7 manner. So what gives you hope that we can kind of counter-program this as a leftist movement?
Yeah, well, the shape of propaganda has changed since 1917, but if you look at what was being published in the bourgeois press in the lead up to World War I and during World War I, it was very similar to what we see now. just lies upon lies upon lies. And there's in the same way that the mass media has allowed for this 24/7 spewing of lies, it also allows for broader access to other political perspectives. I'll repeat it again. The World Socialist website is really an invaluable resource when it comes to news and finding out the truth about current events. I'm reading Leon Trotsky's History of the Russian Revolution right now, and in one section he says, at a certain point, it became clear that the workers didn't trust any newspaper except for Pravda, which was the Bolshevik newspaper. There were tons of other newspapers, but they would only trust that one when it came to the matters of the fight for socialism. So even though those the developments of technology can seem daunting, that it seems like now the capitalist class, the bourgeoisie, has more power than ever, it's really a tenuous grasp. Sorry, what else was...
Well, I guess what I was trying to say, like, what gives you hope that we can build that working class consensus that is going to propel us to really, like, overtake those capitalist structures that are trying to divide us? And is there, like, any kind of renewed hope in how the political environment is now, that we can build that sort of working class revolution against this mutual oppressor?
Well, yeah, I think that right now more than ever, people have their ear to the ground. They are looking for a correct political perspective. When I only started reading the World Socialist website a few years ago, and I was struck by the coherence of the articles that I read. They were able to not only discuss the events but place them within a broader context of the class struggle and the class antagonisms that are part of our society. And I do think that like I've mentioned it already, but there is a shift that happening right now of the masses to the left, and it is not at all reflected within the official political structure right now. In the political structure, you actually see a shift to the right happening, and that mirrors exactly what was happening in Russia and throughout the world, really. But it was most conscious in Russia in 1917. There was a shift of the masses to the left, while the official political parties were shifting to the right. And as soon as the masses can become conscious of that and can understand the class forces that are behind it, that's when a political revolution, a social revolution, can occur. So I am hopeful. I think that the truth really has a power of its own, and workers will understand that they're hearing the truth when they hear it. The task is to get the truth out there, and that's the responsibility of the Revolutionary Party, and that's why you see the Socialist Equality Party coordinating the events that it does. It's ultimately aimed at elevating the consciousness of the working class to prepare for the coming class struggle.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Joe. And that's a more eloquent way of putting it, that I try to remind my listeners on the show that I think a lot of people were kind of despondent after Trump won the election, but he's just a figurehead, and everything that's happened last year and the years preceding it has been about the people realizing their own power. Not even talking about that guy, that old dude from Vermont, but the rise of the social movements in the last several years, out of a time of before that, a lot of complacency, a lot of apathy. We're seeing an unprecedented amount of engagement. And from that, I think we really can push forward and make something happen. So
yeah, thank you. If I could just, in thanking you for letting me be on here, I'd like to remind people that we are having our local listening event for the online lecture this Saturday, April 22nd at 4:45 in the Bernhard Center, room 211. If you'd like to get involved with the IYSSE here on campus, you can find us on Facebook. Just go to facebook.com/IYSSEWMU. You can also contact us via email at IYSSE.wmitch@gmail.com. And thank you again for allowing me to be on here.
All right. Thank you, Joe. And thank all of you for listening. We will be back next Wednesday at 5 o'clock. So this has been the Hoodrat Strategist radio program. Keep fighting for that revolution solution, ladies and gentlemen, and I will talk to y'all and drop those truth bombs again next week.